Hi everyone, welcome to Zero Waste, More Kindness. I'm so glad we can do this together on a Saturday in isolation. So, Suzanne, I see you're in. Kira, I think you're in. Dee, when you get here, can you just maybe send us a message in the comments so that we know you're here? And Kira, can you let me know if we're still waiting for Kieran's friends to pop into the talk? So get comfortable. The talk should only last for about 50 minutes and then we can catch up afterwards on house party. Okay, so I'm going to dive into the slides now. That's all you're going to see of me for the evening. So see you later. Enjoy. Okay, so just to get started, I qualified as a zero waste instructor about 2 months ago in December. So I'm still finding my feet with it, and okay, let's crack on. So this will be the plan for the evening. We're going to start with an overview of zero waste, and then we're going to look at what's so bad about waste. We'll then look at other changes you can make in your life apart from going zero waste. We'll look at the 5 R's of zero waste, the main ones being refuse, reduce, recycle. We'll then move on to zero waste shopping, because there's no point in learning all about zero waste but then having no idea where you can actually shop for zero waste stuff. And finally, we'll look at a series of zero waste basics, so pictures of things that are handy and basics to have when you're starting a zero waste journey. Okay, so I never really know where to put this picture in the talk, so I just thought I'd stick it in at the beginning to kind of give us a visual of what we're talking about. So basically, the whole idea of zero waste is to recognize that every item we buy, be it for practical reasons, food packaging, or for impulse buying, or something we've really longed for and cherished for and saved up, eventually becomes waste. Things don't just disappear after we've used and enjoyed them, they hang around. And if you look at the foreground of the picture in the middle, there's a pink sandal there, so that's something somebody probably would have bought for a holiday and maybe used for 2 weeks, and now it sits here amongst these children and it's never going to go away. So the zero waste movement is about acknowledging that our purchases don't just disappear, they hang around. Okay, so looking at a definition, zero waste is a philosophy, a strategy, a set of practical tools seeking to eliminate waste, not manage it. So if we break that down a bit, starting with the idea of a philosophy, when you begin a zero waste journey, it's definitely changes your way of thinking. So it can be considered like a personal philosophy, that you're going to care more for the items that you have and that you're going to see the broader picture in terms of the items that you have, in terms of their lifespan and how they can be reused rather than wasted. It's also a strategy. I'm going to show you places where you can shop zero waste so that you actually have easy ways to live this lifestyle. And it's a set of practical tools, which is the bit I love the most. And that's what I mentioned earlier, that I'll show you actual items that you can use when living a zero waste lifestyle. Practical things that you can bring into your life to help you live this way. And it's seeking to eliminate waste and not manage it, not simply manage it. That's what I was talking about with the picture with the children surrounded by the waste. It's about eliminating waste, because recognizing that it lasts for forever, really. Okay, so what are we looking at here with these 3 models of economy? If you look at the top one, the linear economy, this is the one we're currently living in, where things are produced, manufactured, we consume them, and then the vast majority of them end up in landfill. This is the model we've had for the last 30 years, where consumerism coupled with production has accelerated. The one in the middle, the recycling economy, is what has been encouraged, let's say, over the last 20 years, ever since I think it was Coca-Cola decided to put the blame on consumers and say, oh, you should be recycling, as opposed to we should be going back to using our glass bottles like we were originally doing when they invented the Coke can. I think it was, they decided to put the work at our feet in terms of recycling. And as you can see with recycling, something gets used once or twice and then it too ends up in landfill. And what the zero waste movement and minimalist living and this kind of thinking is encouraging is asking us to look at the circular economy, the one at the bottom, and you can see how the line enters and goes round and round and round and then goes back the way it came, with very, very little going to landfill. So this is the idea of reusing what you have, enjoying and cherishing what you have, and then finding another home for it when you're done with it, passing it on so that it can be used again and again. Okay, so put pictorially, this is the linear economy visualized. So if you look over on and this is the current choice that is being forced upon us as consumers. If you look over to the left, even the organic baby food is coming in plastic packaging. If you cross the aisle and look at the cat food, the vast majority of it is covered in plastic. And then further down that aisle, your toilet paper is coming in plastic. Crossing back across the aisle, you have your shampoos and conditioners, and again, the only options for you there are plastic. So really the current model and the model of the last 30 years is to give you no choice, to force you to buy these plastic products. So it's really not our fault that we're consuming so much plastic, but the good news is more and more shops like the one you can see now are cropping up. And later in the talk I'll show you a list of all the talks of the shops that have cropped up in Ireland. So this is an example of a zero waste shop. Starting with the fruits and vegetables, you can see that they're completely unpackaged. Up above that on the walls there are those cylinders coming down that are filled with all your staples, from pasta to rice to even popcorn. So the idea here would be that you bring in your own containers and that you fill up your container with your pasta. And then if you look at the blackboard at the back of the picture, you can see the outline of the TARE system there, which is the system where you measure your empty container first, then fill it up, and then measure it again when you're paying. So yeah, this is really the way forward. This is giving us as consumers an option where we can live out our values, live out our morals, and refuse plastic packaging and wasteful consumption. And they also look gorgeous. I think these shops are lovely. Okay, so next we'll look at a history of the zero waste movement. So it started as a product design concept in the 1970s, looking at redesigning ways to avoid waste in industry. And more recently, it's become a popular lifestyle movement. And I'll show you a few people that you can, follow on the next slide in terms of that lifestyle movement. And but it's good to recognise that despite it now being a popular movement, Indigenous people have always lived sustainably, and people of Ireland were the same about 50 years ago, just using what you have and sorry, technical difficulties. And actually at the first talk I did, there were two grannies in their 80s at the talk, and as I was explaining all the ideas about really making the most of what you have and passing it on to someone else when you're finished with it, they were just nodding their heads throughout the whole talk. And at the end I asked them how they felt about the talk, and they were saying that that's just how they lived when they were growing up. That's how Ireland was. You know, you'd have an outfit and then you'd pass it down to someone else, you know, and there was no overconsumption. There wasn't the same levels of hyperconsumption that we have now. So it's great that we have that living memory of how things were, and you know, and we can get back to that, hopefully. Okay, so who are the zero wasters? So the one on the left, Bea Johnson, was the founder of the modern zero waste movement, and she has an excellent TED talk called 2 Adults, 2 Kids, Zero Waste, about how her journey started, her zero waste journey. In the middle you have Sedona Christina, who has a YouTube channel about how to live a zero waste life, and you can see again she's in a zero waste shop, and you can see all those cylinders filled with good stuff behind her. And on the right is Shel Bisley, who's my favourite YouTuber. She's actually qualified, she has a BA in environmental science, and she's dedicated her life to educating people about zero waste. And she has a YouTube channel as well called Shel Bisley. Okay, so just an important thing to note before we dive further in. There's something about the term zero that tends to put people off when we say zero waste. So it's important to reject perfection, and when you start this journey, you don't have to get to a place of zero waste. In fact, I don't think anyone will ever get to a place of zero waste. So we should throw away that idea of having to be perfect. Instead, I think we should adopt the 90-10 rule, which that EcoBitch on Instagram coined. So the 90-10 rule is that 90% of the time you live zero waste and you're doing your best, and then you give yourself that wiggle room, that 10%, where you don't judge yourself if you are zero waste. And I think it's a great way to live because it takes the pressure off. Also, you can reject the term zero waste altogether and just call it low waste living, which I do on Instagram a lot of the time, so that it takes away that connection to the word zero and perfection. So really it's just all about us journeying and doing our best. Okay, so what are some reasons to practice zero waste in your life? At the top, we have the idea that living a zero waste lifestyle shows you and others that you care about the planet. So it's a way of indicating to other people, family and friends, that you're looking out for them, that you're thinking about the climate crisis we're in, and that you're making changes in your life that match your values about caring for the planet and future generations. It also ties into the idea of having less stuff equaling being less stressed. And this is coupled with the idea with the minimalist movement of how people generally tend to be less stressed when they have less stuff. And now, although bigger businesses like Dunnes are now starting to have zero waste fruit and veg, in general, this is a great way to support small and local businesses, like fully zero waste shops that we'll be chatting about later. And of course it saves you money because you're learning to say no, you're flexing that muscle of denying yourself impulse purchases and things like that. So I've calculated that I save about €3,000 a year by living a zero waste minimalist lifestyle, which is absolutely brilliant. And you can put that money into things that you value and that are good for your health, like exercise. And of course you meet like-minded people along the way, which is always lovely. Now, if I'm honest, this next picture of my niece represents the real reason that I've gone zero waste. She was born around the same time that the IPCC climate change study came out. That's the International Planet on Climate Change. And they said that we had 12 years to radically change the amount of emissions we're creating, and if we don't, we'll basically create feedback loops that we can't come back from. So climate change will basically run rampant and we won't be able to come back from it. So we just have that window in which to make changes. And I want to be able to look at her when she turns 12 and say that, you know, we did something, that we actually listened to the science and that we took real action. Okay. And just a note about the IPCC, they are historically very conservative. They're the body of experts that tell governments about and the public about climate change, and because they have to keep in rapport with governments, they tend to not have said that things were as drastic as they are. So the fact that they came out with that study and gave us 12 years to make radical change speaks volumes, seeing as it's coming from a small c conservative institute. Okay, so cracking on with the matter at hand. What is so bad about waste? Well, when I was studying to be a zero waste facilitator, this statistic came up that 1 pound of stuff you buy hides 70 times the waste. So what are we talking about there? It's the idea, if you think of buying your plastic packaged laundry detergent. So you pick that one bottle of plastic off the... So I'm trying to read the comments as I'm talking. This is all new to me, sorry. Love it, Suzanne. You lived in hand-me-downs. Oh my God, I love it. Okay, so if you think of that one box of plastic bottle, you take it off the shelf and you use it for a couple of weeks, and then it goes into landfill, and it itself hangs around for hundreds and hundreds of years. But behind that one bottle, there is 70 times that waste created. So in terms of finding the initial resources, then getting them out of the ground, or chopping down trees, the forestry, then getting them to the manufacturing plant, all the work that goes into manufacturing them, then transporting them to where you found them in, say, Tesco's. Within that whole process, 70 times more waste is created. So we can think of anything in our life, all the effort you possibly put into buying a house, all the months of saving and the high tension, and then you got your house. Well, imagine if it came with 69 other houses. Imagine if you had to take the weight of that on. If you had to actually take care of all of those, it would be impossible. Or even going back to that laundry detergent, if rather than taking one off the shelf, you had to take on the burden of the other 69, and they all had to come home with you, and you had to do that with everything you buy. I mean, number one, you wouldn't be able to afford it, and number two, it would just be there'd be no way to live that way. So going zero waste, we recognize that there is a huge amount of waste downstream, and going forward we try to avoid that. Okay, so in terms of stats, about 8.3 billion tons of plastic has been produced since the 1950s. So around 80% of that has ended up in landfill or the environment. So clearly recycling isn't working, and just far too much plastic is going into landfill and the environment. So this picture is from a exhibition called The People's Plastic that was in the Science Gallery in Trinity a couple of weeks ago. And the stat says there every day approximately 8 million pieces of plastic pollution find their way into our oceans. So that's every day, 8 million pieces of plastic find their way into our oceans. And in terms of plastic in the oceans, a great way to help is to stop eating fish, because 50% of the plastic found in the oceans is actually from the discarded nets which were used to catch fish. I just have one more picture from that exhibition. So this one says there are around 5.25 trillion macro and micro plastic pieces floating in the open ocean. And basically that's enough. We don't need to keep adding to that. And then this one is just a bit closer to home. So this is a picture of Arda lighter medium red grated cheese, and it's found its way all the way to East Java in Indonesia, where it's going to live out its life for hundreds and hundreds of years. And of course the person who bought that just picked it up in Aldi possibly and enjoyed their cheese and didn't even think about it after it went into the bin. Okay, so what are other changes you can make apart from going zero waste? Let's have a look at the broader picture. So it's true that industry accounts for 70% of pollution. So that's industry versus us as individuals. So we have 30% of the blame on our hands. So I think we can really make a difference as individuals by going zero waste, but we have to recognise that industry is creating the lion's share. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of climate change with the IPCC study, it really is incumbent upon all of us, industry and individuals, to start making real changes if we want to look out for our futures and future generations. And then just in terms of climate change, this is just one example of the Arctic ice melting. So in the black and white picture, you have what the Arctic looked like in the summer 40 years ago, and then in the colour picture what it looks like now. So the Arctic summer ice is now 2/3 less than it was 40 years ago, and a full summer melt is likely within the next 5 years. So that means in the summers the Arctic will be completely ice free. And I mean, you can look at so many other examples. Our insect population has declined radically. America, in terms of their soil, only have 10 years left of good soil. So we need radical change. Okay, so then on a positive note, after all that horrible stuff, what are some other changes you can make? So we're going to start with the easiest at the top there and work our way down. One you can all do tonight is to switch from Google to Ecosia. So Ecosia is a web browsing platform that plants trees for every search you do, and it's actually lovely because there's a counter up at the top of it that tells you how many trees you've contributed to planting. It's absolutely free, and they are better on privacy than Google. The next one is to switch to Airtricity or any of the energy companies that allow you to go on a fully green plan. So all you need to do is get your MPRN number and ring Airtricity, and then you can switch over. And they gave us, I think, about €120 when we switched. So it's easy to do. The third one is to eat a mostly plant-based diet. And this can be kind of confusing. Why does what I eat affect the planet? I know I went vegan for the animals about 3 years ago, and this kind of blew my mind when I figured out that eating plant-based can actually help the environment. In terms of studies, the EAT study came out 3 years ago. That's the EAT study, and it was a team of 37 experts from around the globe looking at our food systems, and they basically concurred that we need to eat 90% plant-based if we are going to sustain the numbers of people we have on the planet. So that kind of comes back to the 90-10 rule that I was saying about earlier. If you really love your steak or you really love your eggs, you could still eat them 10% of the time. You could have your Sundays filled with those foods and then work towards a plant-based diet the rest of the week, and that would be very, very helpful. Adopting a plant-based diet is basically one of the easiest and most powerful in terms of the results you can have, change you can make in your life for climate change. The next one is to reject fast fashion. It's a very, very destructive industry, and instead focus on buying from ethical sources or second-hand clothing. Then you can reduce the amount you fly. Again, it's not that you never have to fly again. It's just recognizing that flying on a whim for a weekend away somewhere is probably not the best idea for the environment. And then getting a bit more serious in terms of challenging industry. If you are politically minded, you could start to lobby and try and tackle industry at its source. Or you could even run for office, put yourself forward to represent the rest of us and join the government. And the last one there is activism. So you could use the zero waste lifestyle as your gateway drug, and the more you learn about the climate crisis, you could dip your toe into activism. And this is just an example of my activism. So that's my soap shells there, circled in pink. And I basically got so annoyed with the plastic options in Tesco that I shoved my soap shells in there, took a photo, put it on social media, and also had a chat with my local Tesco's, asking them to give us this option. And they haven't done it yet, but I have opened a dialogue with them, which is hopefully going to show results. Okay, so the whole point of what we've been saying so far is that you can opt out. This model of hyperconsumption and destruction of our planet has been thrust upon us for the last 30 years. It is not how we all always lived, and it's now brought us to the brink of basically extinction. So you have an option to reject that and to opt out and to do better. Okay, so getting to the basics of zero waste, what are the 5 R's of zero waste? Here they are. The first one is refuse, then we have reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot or compost. So focusing on the big main one, refuse, I touched on it earlier. This is about exercising your say no muscle, and that means stepping up to your own urge to impulse buy and to really think through purchases, but also refusing freebies and things like that other people try to push on you. The next one down is reduce, and that just means reducing the amount you buy and the amount of things you have in your home, in your life. And the third one, reuse, is about buying objects that can be reused rather than single-use objects. And I'm going to show you a whole load of those at the end of the talk. Things like reusable straws, for example. And then getting much smaller there at the bottom is recycling. Again, we want to move away from this idea of it's okay to recycle. The options above are so much better: refusing, reducing, and reusing. Okay, so another way of looking at it would be the hierarchy of needs. So at the bottom, the thing we want to be doing most is using what we already have. And you'd be surprised when you start to go zero waste how many things you already have in your home that are reusable. Getting a bit smaller, we want to borrow from each other, a bit smaller, swap, then thrift, then make our own stuff, and at the very top, buy as little as possible. Okay, so then how long does it take things to decompose? Why are we even worried about all this plastic stuff? So a banana peel is going to take 3 to 4 weeks to decompose. A paper bag, similarly, is going to take about a month. Cardboard is going to take about 2 months to decompose. And on the flip side, we have the plastic bottle. So it's going to decompose after 450 years. And even at that, it's just going to break down into smaller particles, and they're going to spread, get into our waterways, get eaten by fish, then get eaten by people. So we have that plastic in our systems, and it's a nasty cycle. The disposable nappy will decompose in 550 years, and the plastic bag will decompose anywhere between 200 to 1,000 years. On a positive note, Ireland has done well in terms of banning plastic bags and our adoption of reusable bags, which is really great. But in terms of the screen, you can see that there's a really sharp divide. When we're buying the plastic objects, they just are going to hang around and continue to pollute our environment. Whereas when we move towards the paper-based or natural based items, our fruits and our vegetables, they're going to work with the earth. They're going to decompose and disappear and become nutrients that will help other things to grow. Okay, so zero waste shopping. There's no point in me telling you how great it is to go zero waste, how much money you're going to save, and how much better you're going to feel about yourself when I haven't told you where you can actually find this stuff. So feel free to take a photo of this slide and share it with friends. This is just a list of all the zero waste shopping spots that have popped up around Ireland. Anywhere from Drumcondra and Phibsborough right through the city centre, the Georgia Street Arcade, Kilmainham, and then out to the south side in Dundrum, in the Green Door Market, and then we have spots in Mayo and Cork as well. So it's really starting to take off, the zero waste movement. Okay, and this is just a picture of one of those shops. This is Noms in Phibsborough, and it's the first zero shop I ever went into. It's absolutely gorgeous. And this second one here is Twig Refill in Cork, which is how I would like my zero waste shop to look like if I ever opened one. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Okay, so that's just two examples of where you can shop. Now, if you can't physically get to any of those shops, there is an online Irish zero waste shop called the Little Green Shop, and it's a family-run business run by Emily Lochran, and she's kindly decided to team up with me today. So if you use the code MAEVEC10, MAEVEC10, you can get 10% off your first purchase. So that's absolutely lovely that she's teamed up with us for today. Now we're on to the zero waste basics, the good stuff. What can you bring into your life to reuse again and again and again? Well, the first one is the reusable bottle. This is from a company called Clean Canteen. I got mine, I'd say about 3 years ago now, and it just now seems to me so much more convenient to have my reusable bottle with me as opposed to buying plastic bottles of water. That seems like more hassle to be thinking, oh, I'm out of water, I have to go to a shop, I have to buy a plastic bottle. This is actually, in my mind, more convenient than having that so-called convenient option in the shop. These are tea towels. You may have seen them before. So the idea with having a bunch of tea towels, say about 10 of them, is that you can radically reduce the amount of kitchen towel you have to buy. So again, thinking of the 90-10 rule, you might have one kitchen towel, tucked away at the back of the kitchen for dire emergencies, but for the run-of-the-mill running of your shop, your kitchen, you just use tea towels for any spills or messes and wash them and move on to the next one. So again, that saves you money. It's brilliant. This is the reusable scrubbing brush. So you can see that the handle is a darker color than the head. That's because the handle is the bit that you reuse over and over again, and then you buy replacement heads. and you can get these at thelittlegreenshop.ie. But those reusable heads are fully compostable. So it's a genuine zero waste cycle there with your scrubbing brush. And the next one is soap shells. So you are definitely going to save money on these. This is an alternative to your toxic plastic laundry detergent. And soap shells have been used for hundreds of years in India for cleaning clothes. So what you do is take about 5 of the soap shells, put them in the little pouch at the bottom of the picture there, tie the pouch, and then pop them in with your washing, and they work just as well with hot and cold water. And then you can use those 5 in that pouch about 5 times until the nuts get very soft and flaky, and then you just put them into the compost. So you can see there on the bag, you can get about 480 washes out of that bag, and that only cost me €13. It just lasts for so long and it works perfectly fine. Great, so that's soap shells. This is just an example of one of the reusables I use when I'm going zero waste shopping. So this is a jar that my mum got secondhand when she was on holidays in France, and that's the jar I'll be using for my whole life to purchase my lentils or my pasta or whatever in. And this is a reusable straw. So just, well, firstly, in terms of straws, there's no need to buy plastic ones anymore because there's so many options. You can get metal, bamboo, even pasta straws now. But straws bring up a larger issue about inclusivity in the zero waste movement. Yes, there's no need for your average person to use a plastic straw anymore, but there are people living with certain disabilities who will always need a plastic straw because none of the alternatives work, and a lot of them are dangerous for people with certain disabilities. Jessica Kellgren-Fozard is a really good person to check out on YouTube in terms of this. She's a YouTuber who talks about living with disability, and and she explains why people with disabilities still need plastic straws. So the whole idea there is that even while we're marching forward and trying to do better for the environment, we include everyone and we think of the more vulnerable people in society. So no to banning straws, but yes to finding the alternative that works for you. Okay, and this is a total basic. This is basically just buying a lunchbox that you can reuse again and again, and I use it for any takeaway food I'm getting as well. So say I'm getting a roll at a deli, I'll just hand over my lunchbox and they can put the roll in there. Yep, and again, it's starting to become more convenient for me to have that, because once I'm finished the sandwich or whatever takeaway food it is, I don't have to think about where to put the waste. There just is no waste. Oh, and the next one I absolutely love. This is a toy that my colleague gave me to keep in my house so that my niece can play with it when she calls over. And the whole idea behind this picture is that there simply are enough toys in the world. There's no need for us to keep producing plastic crap for kids, knowing that it's going to destroy their planet and be horrible for their future, when we have gorgeous stuff like this hanging around secondhand. So yeah, I always love when that photo comes up, it's so nice. And this is a stapler. This is a staple-free stapler. So this blew my mind when I found out about it. This one here staples up to 5 sheets of paper. It basically cuts a hole in the page and then loops the bit that it's cut out back into the hole, the bit of paper back in. And the more pages you put in, like if you put in 3, 4 or 5, the stronger the bond gets. And you can also buy staple-free staplers that work up to 15 pages. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Now, in terms of toothbrushes, there is absolutely no need to be buying plastic toothbrushes anymore. Bamboo toothbrushes are popping up in like mainstream shops like Tesco and stuff like that. So this is the Virtue brush. The only bit that isn't compostable is the bristles at the top. So you just pull them out with the pliers when you're done, and then you can compost the handle. And this is Who Gives a Crap toilet paper. So of all the zero waste basics I'm showing you here, this is the only one that, just give me one sec. Oh yeah, so this is the only one that's going to cost you more money. I'm just having a look at your comments there. Sue, where do you get soap shells? You can buy soap shells from thelittlegreenshop.ie. Okay, so Who Gives a Crap toilet paper? What's so good about this toilet paper that costs a bit more? Basically, they're an ethical company. So when you buy their toilet paper, 50%, that's 50% of their profits go to building toilets in developing countries. The toilet paper itself that you buy from the company can either be bamboo toilet paper or recycled toilet paper, and the cover that you see there and the cone in the middle are all compostable. And you can buy them in giant batches as well, and they make for really good Christmas presents. That's everything I gave to my family this year. And then a truly zero waste option in terms of toilet paper for urination is family cloth. I hate the name of it, it's gross. But basically this is an example of family cloth. So what I did was got a beach towel and cut it up into squares and sewed the edges, and then you basically use that for urination and then wash it on a hot wash. So I have about 50 of those from that one towel, and I've saved so much money on toilet paper because I'm only using family cloth for urination. Absolute game changer. Now, in terms of menstrual products, this is a menstrual cup by Organic Cup. So on average, a menstruating woman will use 10 to 12,000 menstrual products across her lifespan, and with these you buy one per decade really, so you're buying 3 versus 12,000. They're made from surgical grade silicone, and you only have to empty them twice a day. So I insert mine in the morning in the shower, and then I go to work, forget about it, come home, and then take it out, empty it, and reinsert it to be worn overnight. So it's really, really, really convenient. You never have to think, am I running out of tampons or pads? You basically always have your cup at home. Once it's inserted, you forget about it for 12 hours and then change it out again. So and once it's inserted correctly, you don't feel it at all. There is a bit of a fear factor when you're starting them, so give yourself a couple of months to get used to them, but genuinely I would never go back to traditional products again. And again, you're saving money. This costs, I think, between 20 and 25 euro. Now, if you're not comfortable with inserting menstrual products, there's also a reusable sanitary towel. And I'll just move on to the next picture there to show you the other side of it. So it clasps there, and inside you have panels of the same material that you can take out. So this just works like a normal sanitary towel, and then you wash it on a hot wash when you're finished with it. So coming back to the 90-10 rule, I use the menstrual cup about 90% of the time, and then the odd time I would use one of these reusable sanitary towels. Now, in terms of razors, well, there's always the option not to shave. I stopped shaving about 3 years ago, and it's been liberating and absolutely eye-opening. But if you're still shaving, you can always go with the safety razor, which we have a picture of here, and again, it's how people used to shave. So you just swap out the razors the blades themselves, and then you use the razor itself for years and years and years. And the last one I have for you here is absolutely gorgeous. This is from the Literary Lip Balm Company, and it's the Pride and Peppermint lavender and mint scented lip balm. The Literary Lip Balm Company are an Irish company, and this product is completely compostable, organic, vegan and cruelty free. So even with lip balm, there's no need to be buying plastic. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the talk. You can find me on Instagram at More Kindness Now, and at Twitter at More Kindness Now. These I've started both these platforms as to couple up with these talks. So I post nearly daily with items about low waste living, veganism and fitness. And this is a resources page. I can either email it to you. If you want me to email it to you, pop a comment in the comments, or you can take a photo of it. These are resources all to do with veganism, minimalism, low waste living and the climate crisis. And finally, before we hop on to House Party, I'd like to wrap up with a quote from my favourite YouTuber, Shelby. You cannot do all the good the world needs, but the world needs all the good you can do. Thanks a million for tuning in, and see you at House Party. Bye bye.
Talking.
Oh, sorry.
That's insane.
Sorry. We're just trying to wrap things up here.